Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly roundup. I'm Dylan. That's Jennifer. That's Mike. That's Mel. We are the coaches with PSN Coaching. This is the podcast where we get together once a week to talk about what's going on in the industry, what we're seeing in our coaching program, and generally just talking real estate. Today, we're going to be talking all about the decision. Do you list in the summer months when you're ready, or do you wait a month or month and a half until the fall to hopefully catch the wave of the market, and deciding which one of those best suits you, and the way that all four of us would approach that scenario. So we had a little talk before we started, and it's great because it looks like we might have differing opinions here. So this is a fantastic episode for you guys today. We hope you enjoy it. And let's just kind of jump right into it. Mike, I think we might be on the same team here, but I don't want to say so just yet. Tell me a little bit about I'm gonna set the stage for you for a minute. Hold on, just 1 second.
Yeah.
So you meet a client today. They say, "I'll be ready to list July 10th." Now your question is, do you list on July 10th or in that window, or do you tell them to wait until the fall? And how do you usually approach that?
So that's a great question. So I think this is the way that I approach it. There's two things to look at. You have micro of things that will affect it, and you have macro things that will affect the situation. So the micro things are, okay, why is it July 10th? What is important about that date? Do they need to be into their new home by September? Maybe their kids are starting at a new school or something like that. So in that case, I would encourage them to do it, right? The macro being, okay, how is the real estate industry doing as a whole? Are we up in listings? Are we down in listings? How is their community doing? Is there lots of activity? Is there lots of competition? Or is it typically cooler, right? And the reason why I look at both of these situations is because, number one, looking at it from a macro level, looking at it as the economy, right? If you look at the average sale price or the average price for a listing or when they sell, typically there's two peaks in the year. So the market every year seems to do an M in a normal year.
Yep.
Peak one is typically May. Peak two is typically October, right? And then you follow the trend line, and you can follow that over the past, since 2016, it's followed that every single year but 2 years. And the 2 years are 2017, when the market took a massive beating, and 2022, when the market took a massive beating again in April. And so I would encourage them, if they have, in the perfect situation where they have, let's say they're retired or they don't have any timeline, they're just saying, we're going to be ready by July. I would say to them, okay, let's look at the historical data and show what that means to them. So the historical data shows that typically sales are fewer. Home prices are typically a little bit lower in those months. And because of that, depending on what they're looking to do, they might actually benefit from listing at that time point. Typically, I would tell them to wait until the fall if they can. However, the flip side is if they're going to be buying their retirement home, now is a great opportunity for them to do that as well. So they could sell in a lower market, but they're also buying in a lower market as well, because the market you sell in is the market that you buy in.
Mm-hmm.
So for their long-term benefit, they actually might have a benefit because they're buying their retirement home or whatever home that they're going to be in probably for the next 10, 15, 20 years at potentially a little bit of a discount at that time period. Typically, I would always encourage them to wait until the inventory levels as well to see if they're fluctuating. If we're really, really high inventory, I'd be more willing to take the gamble and wait until the fall market. If it's very low inventory, I would say, yeah, let's go. Let's list it, because you're going to capitalize on a low inventory market. You're going to get a higher price point. But again, that's going to affect you when you're going to buy it. So generally speaking, I always advise my clients to be in the early spring. Like I love taking listings on in February.
Me too.
February just comes out of the new year. The market starts to take off again, and there's such little competition. I love it. Also,
sorry, Mike, I'm gonna cut in just so that you're not having a conversation with yourself. I want to get these guys in here, and I love that you didn't follow my lead too much and just going right into it. You took a step back and you say, this is what I usually do. I actually look at these factors in the market, and then that's how I start to do it. But not just the market, also asking them, like, I need to know what their goals are, right? Because their timelines would depend on, hey, are we just basing this decision on timing the market, or are we basing this decision on everything else that's going around the purpose of our move, right? And so, Jen, I want to throw it to you and get some of your insight, while also acknowledging that even with Mike's premise, and we've all agreed that we kind of like, well, I know you nodded, I nodded, I don't know what Mel was doing, but the idea of, taking those listings in February, And even though Mike
Oh
had
yeah.
already said, you know what, May has been the high point for the average price in terms of the spring, yet he still likes taking them in February. So I know that there's more thought on why he takes those listings at that time. So I don't need you to kind of go there just yet, but I want to know where you're at in terms of that decision making process on why something like February might work well when we're acknowledging that October and May are still kind of the peaks in those markets.
Yeah, that's a big question. So I think first of all, first Mike kind of hit the nail on the head in regard to understanding the circumstance when you're looking at when to list. In regard to February, the reason that I was nodding and agreeing so much is because traditionally, people haven't historically liked listing in February. What we've been seeing happen over the last few years is that by end of January, we already have a pretty bullish market. It is relatively aggressive, and people are holding back their listings until the spring, until April and May, because they're following the historical trends that Mike was talking about. And if you actually think about those trend lines, they're school cycles, right? That's what that's generally based on. Once the school season is done, the market calms down, then it starts up again. We get a little bit of traction, then it slows down again, and you get your peaks and your valleys, right? And people tend to make their moves around as a general. It's not everybody, it's not a blanket statement, but families and upsizing, downsizing, you can generally correlate that to that cycle. But what's happened over the last few years, in my opinion, and it's longer than a few years, we've been seeing it for a while now, is that the market has gotten aggressive earlier. It used to be that the market was slow right through February, and it really didn't start to get traction until March, and you could kind of bank on that. Now, like, in 2020, January was an absolutely insane month. In 2021, we saw the same thing happen. In 2020, July was a really busy month, and historically, that's not the norm. But we had a delayed spring market because of everything that was going on with COVID and people trying to figure things out. So every year for us for the past 5 years has actually been a little bit unique. But for some reason, January and February have been relatively consistent in that by mid-January, buyers get back out, the market starts to pick up, you start to see homes sell, and there's not a lot of inventory, which means your listing is going to be one of the limited options. And we know how to stage, we know how to market, so we know we're going to get the exposure. So I know I'm going to sell that house quickly, I'm going to get the most money for it, and then I can leverage that sale and help grow my business and also make sure my clients who maybe do need to move by a certain date have a longer closing, and we can facilitate that because in those months people are more willing to do that. A lot of the time the buyer still has to sell a home, so you get the buy, you get the money, and then they list, they sell, and you get the longer closing, and it's a win-win situation for everybody, including the realtor. So that's why I personally think February is now a month that some of us love if we've figured that cycle out. And the easy answer is we still have low inventory and demand is up, like that, if you want to break it into a really simple kind of concept.
I think before we get to Mel, with both of you still being maybe advocates to saying, hey, wait till the fall, let's say, because our discussion is about, do we listen in the summer or do we listen in the fall?
July.
Yeah. What are some of the cons to listing in the summer that you guys see in terms of why you would maybe advise them to waiting till the fall, other than just looking at, you're like, hey, I look at the trend lines and I know that average price goes up after the summer? Is there any other cons that go along with it?
I do. Every time that I've listed a property in the fall, I mean, I have all the stats on it, at least just my particular listings. I don't know about other people, but I typically see lower showings, right? I see lower activities. Open houses on the weekends are a lot lower because, again, when I think of the summer, I'm like, oh, when it comes to like July, August, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I want to be at a cottage or out in the sun. On the weekends, you're at the farmer's market, you're doing this, you're doing all the activities that people love to do in the summertime, right? That's what I like to do. And I think a lot of people are like that as well. And so I typically see a lot, and again, it doesn't mean that the motivated buyers aren't there. There's still motivated buyers, and you could easily identify them because they're still coming out and looking at your home, right? But I just find that our buyer pool is a lot smaller, right? So you have to be a little bit more aggressive with making sure they come in, or maybe a little bit more aggressive in your marketing strategy to get people to come to your home a lot sooner. So that's the biggest thing for me is I think when the school, like Jen said, it's all school related. I think when school's out, parents are focused on my kid needs daycare during the day. I can't even think about moving right now. I just need to focus on working and managing my children who are at home. And then outside of, those two things, having a little bit of fun, right? Being active in the sun and enjoying the weather while we can. Or maybe there's a family vacation or something like that, right? So I see a lot of slower activity and a little bit slower movement. And that always comes out with the slower sales too, right? There's always a lower amount of sales that happen in those summer months.
So
Jen, what about you?
I'm actually gonna. Sorry, Jenny. I'm itching to hear what Mel's got to say. This is the quietest we've ever had her on one of our shows to the 10-minute mark. So I feel like something's just off.
She's just waiting to get her window, and then she's gonna go off. You know it.
And the most patient she's ever been. Absolutely, Mel. I'm so looking forward to what you're gonna say here, because we've kind of painted a picture. Very heavy towards the downsides of the summer, and we know that that's not the whole story, right? So I'm really interested to know where your stance is on this, especially given the uphill battle that we've painted so far for listing in the summertime.
That's right. Very interesting. I look frozen on mine, but if I'm not frozen to you guys,
You're looking good to us.
Okay.
You're good.
So, well, thank you. Okay, so my opinion is this. My and I hear what you guys say, and I understand the pros that you're talking about. In my experience, and I say this to both agents and clients alike, is keep your eye on the target, not the market. And no more has this become evident than it has in the last few years. I cringe when I hear tell them to wait till the fall. Boy, if people right before COVID, all those people who were waiting, when COVID started, or real estate really started piping up right after COVID started, and if they had been told to wait, to me it's a risk. I always bring them right back to their goals. Like, let me hear and see let's go back to your goals. It's very distracting because I can't see any of you. Sorry. So I'm kind of looking into the abyss here. But I always bring it back to their goals. What is it about now that has you even considering listing? And we deal with those. To me, those traditional ups and downs, yes, they still exist, but I mean, they're not as drastic as they are, those hills and valleys. And I 100% think it's got to be in relation to what their goal is. There are a lot of tactics and marketing strategies and things that the realtors can do in order to create that, like the strategy and the marketing and the promising of how you're going to go about this. There's so many ways to do it. And I think you focus on I focus on what is the best for them at this moment. But I would never, and I can't say I never have told someone that fall may be best, but only if it's in conjunction with their moving or their needs or whatever. But primarily, I'm like, okay, let's forget about the October and the May. Let's talk about what your needs are. What would your life look like if we didn't? What would your life look like if we did? What is your bottom line? Going through all of that with them. And that's what I use as a guide. I do not use the market as a guide. I use this is the market we're in that you have to sell in. So what does it look like? What are we going to have to do to get enough attention, to get enough business, to work on it? And I work at it from that angle. It's like timing the market. Waiting till October is like timing the market. And I think time in the market is way more important than timing the market. How are you showing up in the market? What is the plan, the strategy plan to get it done? And that's just my opinion. So I'm not saying that I don't ever, but it certainly isn't the moving factor. Isn't whether it's October or not. It's what makes the most sense.
I like it because you're talking a lot about the micro thing for that client, right? So it's, again, going to the micro level of what is important to them, their timeline, their goals, right? And it's aligning all those things to make it best suit for them. And that's why I think a lot of people would love that, because, again, as long as you have their goals set out, again, there's no bad time to list or no bad time to necessarily buy it, as long as it aligns with your goals and what you're looking to do, right? There was a great quote that I heard by someone. Sorry, Mel, just to finish that off there. They said that the home prices are so crazy, like they're just so high. They're so high. I could never buy. And the answer was, there's no bad time to buy the right home for you. Right? So it doesn't matter if the home prices are crazy. If it's the right home and you're going to be there for 10, 15 years, you're most likely you're going to be okay, right? in 10, 15 years, the home prices will be higher than they were today. Right.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's like sometimes we go back and forth about 50 grand and it's like, well, in the next 15 years, will that have mattered? Right. And it might not have. Right. As long as it fits your goals. So again, I love that.
Well, and if COVID has taught us anything, like I'm not about to tell someone to wait till October. Like those words coming out of my face. Wait till October to sell. Who knows? The world could be blown up by October. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does.
Right.
And if they tell you, then they're liars, right? So
Yeah.
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 only thing we know about is right now.
Yeah. And I agree with that actually. A lot of the times I'll tell my clients these are the trend lines. However, if I had a crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be here right now, right? Because I would have won the lottery or something would have happened. But that's exactly it. You have no idea what's coming down the line. You don't know at any point the government can step in and increase interest rates or lower interest rates, and that will send the market up or down, right? So you have no idea. The only thing that we know is what the market is right now today, and we plan around that, right?
Do you know what would be a good topic going forward? As I'm just thinking about this, because we're talking about different times, whether you're going to do it now or later, but what does the strategy look like? Like, what does the strategy look like in a listing strategy? What, like marketing? We talk a lot about marketing. What does that look like? What are the marketing ideas people use? What about in a summertime? What about, you know what I mean? That would be interesting, I think, for our viewers.
Yeah, I would love that. I think that that's a great idea that we can share some of that insight. And it truly is like, I think what you guys have narrowed in on is in no time in history has that been more true, that the philosophy of, you know, what today's market is right now, you don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, especially as we reflect back on interest rates and what might change or not change. And we've seen how quickly that can change. And not slow down at all. Like those rate increases wasn't just one or two; they just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you gave that advice, and then September came around, you know, what would that look like, right? Whereas now we know what we have right in front of us. This is the one thing we can control. Does it still make sense for you? Can you accomplish your goals in this market? Great. If so, let's do it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Jen, as you're watching these two kind of figure it all out together and talk about their ideas, was there anything that kind of came to mind or past experiences for yourself? Because I think where I land now is definitely in that camp of like, I don't know what September or October is going to bring, but if you had asked me this pre-COVID, I have a very clear intention on how I would have handled that historically. If there was no urgency or timeline, if I'm trying to help my guys net the most money, again, this conversation deepens when you talk about what they need to buy. But I typically was like, hey, if you're going to be listing in August, let's wait 30 days because I know we're going to get a better result afterwards. And, you know, through our experience, we always did. Right. But I think that script is out the window now. What are your thoughts there? Again, looking at past experience and looking at where you are today.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like, I kind of wish you'd have let me answer before Mel, because it just sounds like I'm piggybacking on Mel. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
But no, I think I would have probably been more historically for sure, especially like I did a lot of deals down in Toronto. A lot of people, you know, have cottages, cottage country. So summer was like, you know, you really, it was really quiet. Historically speaking, that was the norm. And there was a time when 100% I would have said like it's not in your best interest to list in July or August specifically. July early enough you could maybe squeak it out, but August definitely not. And really until school started back up, that over the last probably 5 years or so, it has really shifted a lot. And you know, the original question you had asked me about the cons of, you know, telling people of that looks like is that we don't know what we don't know, and that's becoming more and more prevalent every year as we go forward. And the new information, the changes in technology, the COVID and interest rates and wars and all that stuff that's going on, and industry disruption and changes, we can't bank on a standard this is how the year goes anymore, because we haven't had a normal year in about 4 years for sure, probably 5. So how do you gauge someone that, other than, as Mike said, leveraging the stats and looking at the trend lines, and that can help, and that can give you a picture. But the cons of telling someone to wait are going to be that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have certainty. We don't have repetition anymore. And it might end up costing them the potential opportunity to get to the next move that they're trying to make if we advise them that way. And also, a lot of people buy secondary properties now, right? You guys know I'm a
What is she?
fan of.
I don't know, but that,
Jen, you're gonna have to go back to that one. You froze there on us.
Oh, I said I'm a fan of the old cottages nowadays. And if we're having a conversation about a cottage or a waterfront property, then heck yeah, I'm going to tell you to list it in July, because that's probably when it's going to get the most attention, and you're going to have the most people wanting to spend the most money on that type of property. So I think where I'm going with this, and going to what you said, is my answer has probably definitively done a 180 from previous to now, in that in the past there was always a consistent, repetitious market, and we lived it for a very long time, and it was very easy to be in that cycle, and we kind of knew what to expect. And I haven't felt confident in a market at a high level that it's going to repeat the previous year in a long time. So I don't think that it would be fair to say to somebody that they should wait or shouldn't wait. As Mel said, I would still probably lean away from August, because it does seem to just be that month every year that struggles and listings sit. But that being said, if someone needs to list, they need to list. And if I know what I can get them today, I'd rather bank on that right now than assuming that circumstances will be the same come October. So.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think going back to it, if I was going to revisit what my previous advice would be, because looking at those trend lines, we've made our decision based on that information. We bought 2 of our houses in the down seasons. We bought in July for one of them, and then in December for the other one, and both of them served us very well. Like my golden advice, if life circumstance doesn't matter or anything like that, you can time this however you want, and you're basing your decisions solely on what the market's doing. Buy in the summer and list in the fall, right? That was kind of the go-to times, because I see my average price kind of go like this in the spring, then it drops down in July, a little bit further in August, and then it comes back up. So buy down at this peak and sell over here, and just make sure you get a nice long closing on that purchase, and you're good to go. And we've done that in the past, and it's worked out great both for our clients and for ourselves. But looking at what the market that we're in now, we've pivoted to, there's no time better than right now, because I know what's going on right now, right?
Yeah.
I've got the information in front of me. This is how I'm going to look at it, right? Can I achieve what I want right now? Great. That's what I'm going to do. If I can't achieve what I want, then there's no sense in doing it at all, right? I'm not going to move just to move. I'm not going to sell just to sell, buy just to buy. I'm going to make sure I'm achieving a specific outcome, a specific goal. And if now I can do it, then now is the time that I choose to do so.
I totally agree with that, for sure.
The data still matters, right? The data is still important, and the trends and the things we look at, it's still good to educate them and let them understand how the market works and what we normally see. It's just that I think from our perspective, there's less guarantee now that later is better. When it used to be, we used to be more confident about that, right? When it came to July versus the fall, I guess.
Yeah. It's more like a report card to me in my mind right now. I can show you what has happened. I am less confident in telling you that this is exactly
what's coming.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
it's a report.
And it's true, right? Like, I'm looking at my data right now. I'm looking at the graph. I've got in front of me graphed all the way back to 2014. And, all the way up until 2017, it's the exact same line, just on a higher price as it kept going up. And then you're looking at 2022, and I'm like, can't use 2022. That doesn't look right. Looking back at 2021.
Same thing with 2017.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it is tricky. And looking back at that data, it's a little tough. And even looking at the start of this year, the trajectory is just kind of going like this at the moment. that's
Mm-hmm.
what the Treb stats are saying, right? So, what are we going to see in May? What are we going to see in June? That will kind of set the stage a little bit, because here's my concern. When I look back at what happened in in 2020 with COVID, and why the summer months were so great, was we had a delayed spring because everybody was
Yep.
locked down. Nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what was going on. And then all of a sudden from May, we didn't look back. It just kept going up and up and up. And that carried through the summer months. And with this year just going like this for the first 4 months, well, then what does that mean for our summer? At some point, this has to do our little dip, right? So is that going to be a harder dip in the summer? Is it going to keep going? Is May going to be down this year? Like, what exactly does that look like?
Yeah.
It's going to
Like
be
if we
interesting
had,
though, because I'm seeing a lot more power sales, more than I've
Mhm.
ever seen.
Oh, that
You know,
reminds
and
me.
they're
Holy cow. I went golfing with a gentleman on the weekend, and he works in that industry. He serves papers to people that haven't been paying their mortgages. And I just asked him, are you serving more and more papers to people that aren't paying their mortgages? And he's like, yeah, more recently it's been a lot more common than it ever has been before.
yeah,
And he said it's especially with second mortgages. He said number one is the second
of
mortgages
course.
right now of people
right.
not paying their second mortgages. And he has to go and serve them the paperwork to, whatever. That sounds like a
Yeah.
crappy job, but it is what it
And
is,
B
right?
lenders too, right? Because
Yep.
banks typically don't want to keep the house, but B lenders do.
No.
They want
Yeah.
like, let's rotate this. So
Yep.
Yeah.
that's really cool, Mike. Because yeah, I'm seeing that too.
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
stat to like. I was like, because I've reached out to mortgage brokers the past, like, I don't know, 3 months in a row. I've been asking them, and none of them know because the lenders don't share that information. So
Mhm.
mortgage
Yeah.
brokers do
Mhm.
not know what it is. So you literally need people that serve these documents. And I just asked him he just said he happened to be doing this was his job, and I was like, oh, finally, someone that can help me. And I asked him that
Yeah.
question, and yeah, he just kind of went through it, and he said, yeah, like more and more recently, we've seen a lot of people with second mortgages not
Mhm.
not paying their bills, and they're starting to repossess them,
Yeah,
right? Or
very
at least move
interesting.
forward in those
That is good
proceedings.
insight to have. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this too, but like I'd say, end of March and April felt like it was going gangbusters down in, Aurora and South. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing a little bit of a pullback. I'm seeing things slow down
Mhm.
just a little bit. Houses that I would have thought would have kind of continued that trend line are not getting the same outcomes. Are you guys seeing that in your markets, or is it like, what does that look like for you right now?
Okay.
The price points that I'm at with a lot of my buyers, we're still getting our ass kicked,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, we're trying. I got a couple guys that we're trying with this week. We'll see how it goes, but it's definitely like we're talking under $1 million, like
Under
under
a mil?
actually we're talking like really under 850,
Okay.
and we're losing big time.
And
Yeah.
what areas?
Newmarket, Aurora, all the way up to Barrie.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
Keswick as
Mel,
well.
Mel, what
Georgina.
about you?
So it's interesting. Some of the ones that have been on holding offers are still selling at offer date, but some of them are selling at or just below. Others are being, they're all multiples, but it's just the type, the quality, right? Because we're also
Mhm.
seeing a lot of estate sales come up. And I don't know if that has more to do with baby boomers and what, I don't know yet, but there's a lot more estate sales coming up. Like, so older properties needing full renovation, and they're still kind of trying to hype on that big market shift for the holds.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. So there's quite a
Mhm.
movement, and we've never been 100% hold. We're sort of 75-25 in Georgina right now, hold versus typical, but we
Okay.
are seeing some, I would call it like some undertows and some waves. It's not like waves all
Mhm.
going in one direction. There's some undertows and
Mm,
some differences. You can't take generalities, in my experience,
Yep.
right now. Like, you have to really be specific, do the history on that house, figure that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see it as you gotta be on your game. This is not for someone to just rely on trends and call it that. Like, they have to dig in and really be
yeah,
involved
Mhm.
in this valuing. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Jen, what about you?
I mean, I can speak more, I guess, to the conversations I'm having with the agents at this point. I
Mhm.
have had more agents recently than in a long time tell me that they're not getting showings or their listing didn't sell. And kind of saying like, I know the price is right. However, and sometimes that's a fair statement, and sometimes it's a pricing issue. That is becoming more prevalent. I've found in the last probably a week or two, and I would say for sure from the Aurora New Market, in my opinion, it seems the peak is past. And maybe there's going to be another peak. I don't know, but the excitement around the market and that energy and that sense of like things are really going crazy. I don't see that right now. I don't feel that from the agents. I don't see it in the listings that we follow or watch or anything like that. It seems to be cooling off. And to what you said earlier, Dylan, that I was wondering the same thing. Like, we did have a strong start to the year, and that January seemed to be the bottom, and we somewhat trended upwards since then. So is that, or was that our spring market? You know what I mean? Like, did we just have a really, because we had such a slow
It's almost as if,
fall,
yeah.
right? And everybody had such a down fall. You're kind of going like, are we just that delayed? Was last year's summer, fall, and then the winter was spring? Like, what's happening? But it is not a traditional year, that is for sure. And I feel, as Mel said, I think it's very property dependent right now. I think there are some that will still pop off because they're beautiful and show well and people are excited about them. I think everything entry level still seems to be really going in multiples. Buyers are trying to get into the market right now with the rate hold. So you're seeing that competition. And I think everything else is slower and is slowing down, and is going to continue to do so if I was to suspect anything over the next couple months.
Yeah.
Well, and we've heard,
It's
or I've
yeah.
definitely heard. Sorry, I've definitely heard that
Go ahead.
to expect a rate increase again, to expect another
Interesting.
rate increase.
Yeah,
In
I've
June.
been hearing some
Inflation.
rumors about that too. Yeah, with
Yeah.
inflation, we'll
That's
we'll
good
have to see what
insight.
happens. But I was just about to say, it's almost as if we're peaking in May and we're going down for the summer months, which is
Right?
exactly what we were just
Almost.
talking about. Right? It's
Like full
Yeah.
circle somehow.
yeah,
We've come
it's
full
literally just
circle.
going right back to what we were talking about. The peak is in May, and again, that is generally, like, to me, that's what the trend line is showing, is that we're just doing exactly what we've done in every normal real estate market.
Yeah.
But again, what Mel was just saying, if they throw an interest rate increase, it's a whole new ball game, because who knows now what's going to happen, right? There's a lot of variable rate mortgages that will be affected, and again, people will have to sell. So it would
Yep,
not
and
shock
that's
me.
where
The U.S., I was just reading earlier today, the U.S. is probably talking about doing that, and they've just said that their rate cuts are probably off the table until late next year at this point. So
Yep.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So I mean, that's all the more reason to go back to our topic, where listing as soon as you're ready, if it has to be in July, makes just that much more sense. That you're like, I am not going to risk waiting till the fall, or,
Yeah.
I don't know what's
unless
gonna
something
happen.
happens sooner. But you know what I mean? I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe there's 2 increases by the time I'm ready if I don't take care of it now. And so I think that
100%.
that's the important thing to take away from our discussion today, is look at what's the outcome that your client's trying to achieve. Are you able to do it now? And just ultimately, you only can truly know what's going on right now, what you're looking at. We can't look forward anymore and guarantee that, well, hey, every year I know that it's May and I know that it's October. You know, that's
Yeah.
out of whack now, right? So let's take a look at where we're at now. All right. Any closing thoughts? I mean, I think we covered that really well. I'm seeing head shake. Yeah, we're looking good.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us today. You can catch us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else that you get your podcasts, as well as PSN Coaching on YouTube. So I'm Dylan. That's Jen. That's Mike. That's Mel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.